What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing, and today we are going to preview the offense for the Green Bay Packers here in 2025. And I'm going to make some stat predictions, which, they're a little dangerous. Hopefully I don't botch them too bad. We'll go into who could make the roster. I'm going to have an official 53-man prediction episode coming up at some point. But in this episode, we'll kind of go over who to watch for, who I think is on the bubble of making the team. To be honest, the offense is significantly easier than the defense, so I'll just leave it at that. Before we do that, though, we have to talk about the first preseason game of the season, and it was ugly. It was quite ugly. I left my family reunion early to watch it and make sure I had it covered for you guys. I took notes. Sadly, I should have just stayed at the reunion, RIP, and I really should have just watched the highlights afterward because it was not much to see. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on the game. I do want to start with the fact, though, that we need to, chill a little bit on the overreactions. Let's remember the Lions, the year they went 0-16, they won all their preseason games. We've seen it time and time again where teams, really good teams, by the way, look hideous in the preseason. There's a multitude of reasons for it. I don't know if you guys watched the all-22 of the Packers offense, but they ran like 3 plays, all slants and comebackers. They ran very basic motion, really, really simple running concepts. And, it was their third string running back running. So the first team offense played 2 series. There were a couple nice throws from Jordan there. The third down catch to Golden was really, really nice. He had a couple really good throws. He had one to Heath that he dropped. We'll get to the drops in a bit. Obviously, we saw drops from Malik Heath. Romeo Doubs dropped a pass. There was one that he, quote-unquote, dropped, but I think it was just good pass defense by, Sauce Gardner. I think, we start to get nervous when we see drops after what we saw last season, but if we keep in mind, they're still missing Watson, Reed, Wicks, and Savion Williams is not, he doesn't have exactly the best hands in the world. So, again, I don't think we should make too much of it. The first team defense played 1 series. Justin Fields, our good old buddy Justin Fields, led the Jets' first team down to a TD. There were actually some really good pass rushes on that drive. There was some good stuff in the run game from Van Ness. I liked what I saw from Wyatt and Clark. Had a couple nice rushes as well. And the Jets' offensive line is not bad by any means. They got some good players up there. Armand Menbu at right tackle was one of their high picks. They had Olufashanu out there. So they have a good team. The touchdown run to Justin Fields, I was kind of thinking about this morning. I saw it on a couple other shows as well, that touchdown run that Fields had was cover 1. They would never call that against a quarterback that has 4.3 speed in the regular season. So again, I don't think we should be overreacting to this. I've seen some of the fire Matt LaFleur tweets, and if anybody watching this, I don't mean disrespect or listening, sorry, and you think that they should fire LaFleur based off of a preseason game, I'm sorry, that's absurd. Preseason is very vanilla, both offense and defense. They don't do any game planning. They don't want to get anything on tape because they don't want people to have stuff that they can study. So they kept it vanilla on offense and defense. As far as the defense goes, like I said, there was some good pass rush reps there. Ben Ness had a nice run stop. I mentioned that as well. There were a few really nice run stops, actually, on that. So as far as players who really helped themselves, I want to get into that first. Jordan Morgan and Anthony Belton, basically offensive linemen 6 and 7 on the team. Neither of them gave up any pressures. They both had like 20-plus pass rush snaps. Belton had a really, really nice block on Amar Johnson's TD run, which I loved. Neither of them gave up a pressure. So again, it's a very encouraging sign from 2 players who were drafted high by the Packers that we haven't really seen a lot of. And, again, they're not starters this year. Although I do think it's possible that, we could see Jordan Morgan starting at left tackle. I don't think it's likely. Rashid's going to come back from that injury and probably take over the number 1 position, but we'll see. So it was just good to see those two. It was kind of their first extended action, especially Jordan Morgan with all the injuries last year, and I thought he looked good. So Barron Sorrell was kind of the MVP for me. He had a couple quarterback hits. He had an 87 pass rush grade from PFF. I really liked what I saw from him. The 2 quarterback hits he had, he absolutely mugged that left tackle and flew back there. He showed some nice bend. His hand placement, the moves he used with his hands, fast hands, looked really good too. He had a couple of nice run stops as well. I think for me, seeing Barron Sorrell play with the ones a little bit this next week during practice would be something that I would do. Another guy, Kingsley Enagbare, I thought he played pretty poorly last year. I was really encouraged by him. He's a guy who was pretty pro ready when he came into the league. Again, we talk about having a pass rush plan, meaning a plan to attack the left tackle or the right tackle, depending on where you're playing, not just, hey, I'm going to beat you with my speed or my strength, right? I'm going to use different moves. I'm going to do different counters. I'm going to do moves off of moves to make sure I get in the backfield. Enagbare has always been pretty advanced in that, despite not having great athleticism. We kind of forget at the end of 23, we thought he tore his ACL. And then he came back. He didn't tear his ACL. He came back in 24, and he was pretty bad last year, candidly. Because of all the snaps that he's played, he is eligible for like a $2 million salary this year. The Packers could get off that contract pretty easily and cut him if somebody else steps up, like a Brenton Cox, for example, who I also thought had a nice game. So again, Enagbare definitely helped himself in this game. I'm still not entirely sure if he's going to make the team. If he does, I still like, Sorrell a lot better long-term. He probably ends up being pass rusher 3 by the end of the season, but I think it'll be Enagbare early if he does make the team. Amar Johnson had a nice game, obviously that insane touchdown run, but he actually had a couple other good runs. Up the middle, he showed a really good burst. He's really strong. He's got really good contact balance. I mentioned it in the post-draft episode when they picked him up as an undrafted free agent. I thought he had some really nice potential, some good stuff there from him. In this game, obviously he played at I think D1A, I forget what South Dakota State is. So he didn't get a lot of buzz. He wasn't even on Daniel Jeremiah's board. I don't know if anybody else was really scouting him very much either, but he showed a lot in this game. I think he's definitely a lock for the practice squad this season. It's going to be him and Abanaconda sort of duking it out here in camp for that RB5 spot. That said, I do think Abanaconda had a pretty good game on returning punts or kicks as well. Didn't really show a lot as a running back, but definitely a good battle to keep an eye on. Obviously, the Matthew Golden, he drew a PI on Sauce Gardner. That was really cool to see. That first down catch was beautiful hands catch. Really, really tough catch, by the way. He was getting hit by two people at once, so I really liked what I saw from Golden. Tyron Hopper, 9 tackles. He had an 88 PFF grade. Hopper is that third-round pick from last year that all of us were scratching our heads, myself included. Like, man, why did they pick this dude in the 3rd round? They probably could have had him in the 5th round, right? But he played well. I think next season we're going to see him starting alongside Walker and Cooper. If for some reason they can't get a Walker extension done, which I don't think will happen, I think they'll sign him for sure, but you could see Hopper starting next year there too, right? He's going to be sort of competing with McDuffie right now, and even Isaiah Simmons, who played poorly in this game also, for that linebacker 3 spot on the weak side. Daniel Whelan, again, you don't want your punter to ever be the player of the game, but he probably was the player of the game. I don't know anything about special teams. I don't really know what I'm looking for outside of punting and kicking, at least to a level I could speak competently. But Daniel Whelan, by all accounts, has had an insanely good camp. He showed a lot last year. He had a 63-yard punt in this game. His hang time was unbelievable. There was a punt where it was just in the air forever, it seemed like. I think it was like a 51-yard punt, but the Jets player fielded it. There were already defenders waiting for him. Now, granted, they missed the tackle, but I digress. I think Daniel Whelan's a weapon. If we do have to punt this year, I feel really good about Whelan being the guy. A couple other takeaways. Again, I'm not going to get into the bad players. Mecole Hardman looked terrible in this game. I don't know. I think he's probably a lock to make the practice squad. I think if he does become a free agent, the Packers cut him. Somebody's probably going to sign him for cheap, but we'll see. Bo Melton, obviously, he made the switch to cornerback. The biggest takeaway for him is that he didn't even play in the second half. They clearly have him pretty high on that depth chart. Gave up a couple catches, missed a tackle here and there. I think he missed a tackle on Lazard, LOL. But I thought it was a good showing from him. It was nice to see early on, somebody like him who, has made a lot of buzz for switching positions, actually make really nice cornerback plays. And again, where he's at in the depth chart is the most encouraging thing. You clearly have, Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Nate Hobbs ahead of him. Probably Kamal Hadden, who didn't play in this game at cornerback 4. But then it's probably Bo Melton. He was playing ahead of Kalen King in this game. So that's definitely interesting. We need to keep a good eye on that. I think Melton's probably going to make the team. And I do think that he may make a 6 wide receiver dispensable. In other words, I think they're only going to keep 5 receivers, which we'll get to. And you could put Belton in if there's a bunch of injuries at receiver, right? If he needs to do that. So anyway, Golden, he was out early in this game. He's very clearly on the first team. He's not going to be a backup this year. Obviously, we didn't have Wicks in this game. We didn't have Reed in this game. But if they saw him as somebody who's further down the depth chart, I think they would have played him more in this game. I could be wrong. But I do think that seeing him, basically only play the first 2 series with the ones, then come out, it kind of shows where he's at on the depth chart. Typically, we see rookies get extra time in preseason games. So for him to only play 2 series with the starters, that was interesting. So his stock seems to just continue rising. Nazir Stackhouse played with the first team a little bit. He did stay in with the second team as well. I think he's going to make the 53 over Warren Brinson, which we'll talk about the defensive preview next week. I thought he had a couple nice run stops. Colby Wooden had a good game too. He wasn't on my list. He had like 4 or 5 run stops, which is encouraging. Carl Brooks played well. Again, we haven't seen anything or heard anything from him in camp this year. So despite it being an ugly game, there was still some good stuff. Let's go into our offensive preview. So let's start with stats. I went into some of this at the end of the season on our first ever Titletown Talk episode. The stats from last year, they were 8th in the league in points scored, 5th in total yards per game. That's crazy. Okay. Their offensive DVOA, though, again, DVOA is weighing in the strength of the defensive schedule. They were 4th in the NFL. Their passing DVOA was 3rd, and their rushing DVOA was also 3rd. So again, it's the strength of the opponent's defense. To me, your ranking in DVOA shows a lot about your quality of offensive play overall. Again, so I think those numbers are insane. I just want to point out really quick that the attitude and feeling around the Packers offensively does not really reflect how good they were. Again, those numbers give you everything. And it does a really good job of sort of contextualizing how great I think they can be in 2025. If we think back to last year, and again, we'll get into some of the reasons for this, but did it ever really feel like they were in rhythm for any extended period of time? Again, I'll pause for a second and let you think about it. Can you think of any game last year or stretch of games where they just were in rhythm? They felt like they were really going. They were in a really good rhythm against the Dolphins, the Seahawks, the Cardinals, right? But then they would have a mistake, a holding call, or a drop. That was most likely the case. And it just never felt like they never put together a full game. And they still won 11 games, and they were the 3rd ranked offense in DVOA, passing and rushing. So again, it's wild to think about how bad they looked at times, disjointed they looked, but they were still a top 5 offense. So again, it just, again, contextualizes just how good they can be this year. Jordan's injuries played into that. There was disjointed pass protection on the interior. We'll get into the Elton Jenkins versus Josh Myers conversation in a minute. They just, whenever they got into a rhythm, it just felt like something would happen. That's what I'm trying to say. Even with all that, I would say they played up to maybe 60 to 70% of their potential at best last year. Again, still one of the best offenses in the league. So really, as Packer fans, we should be excited about that. Now, again, they have to prove it this year. A lot of people need to take a step. But I think, looking back at what happened last year, I think it's encouraging. So I think as far as overall this season, I think they can be a historically good offense. Not just like best offense in the league, but one of the best in Packers history. Now, again, will they reach that? I'm not predicting that by any means. But in terms of what their ceiling is, and if they can be that good, I think the answer is very clearly yes. Again, I just think regardless if they become number 1 in the league or whatever, it's just going to look and feel differently this year. Now, it might not show up in the stats. Maybe, they get some big leads in games where they already only have 300 yards of offense, and then they, just kind of run the clock and get first down slowly, right? That's not going to show up as a big stat, but a big win. So let's start at quarterback. Let's preview the quarterback position. Obviously, we have Jordan Love and Malik Willis. Those are going to be the 2 quarterbacks on the active roster. Then we have Sean Clifford, I think he's 3rd-year quarterback out of Penn State. And we have the UDFA from Canada, Taylor Algersma. So I'm not going to get into my Jordan Love speech. I did it on the last episode. I think he's going to have a really big season. I don't think he's going to win the MVP because, again, it kind of takes a few years of being in that conversation before you win it. Now, granted, that did not work that way for Mahomes, his first or second season or whatever it was. Second season, first year starting. But I do think he's going to be in the conversation the whole season. So my prediction for Jordan, this is my stat prediction. I'm going to go 4,200 yards for him, 35 TDs, 12 interceptions with a 65% completion percentage. So really, it's the same stats he had in 2023. Now, could it be higher than that? Absolutely. I think the picks could get into that 12, 15 range. I think the TDs could be 35 to 40. I don't see his TDs being under 30 this year. I just don't, unless they really use Jacobs in the run game close to the goal line, but we'll see. I don't think the stats are going to show this, but I think we're going to see PFF tracks what's called the big time throws. He had like 39 in 2023 and like 17 last year. So I think regardless of stats, we're going to see that number jump a lot this year, probably closer to the 40 range. So obviously Malik Willis is going to be the backup. We hope that we never see him. At least I do. I know some people are like these big Malik Willis stands. Foolish. We saw a lot from Malik last season. He stepped in, won what I would call 2.5 games, the 2 games, Colts, Titans, and then against the Jaguars, he came in relief. He should have won that Bears game at the end of the season. Obviously, there were some poor calls at the end there. I still love his tools. Rocket arm. He's smart. He's a really, really good athlete. He's fast. He's built like a running back, honestly. He's going to make the team. He did not play a good game last night in the preseason. I thought that was sort of disappointing. But no, I would not trade him. That's something I've heard a lot. I would keep him. You never know if something's going to happen to your starter. And we know that if Jordan is out for an extended period of time, Malik can hold it down. So that leaves Sean Clifford and El Guerzma battling for the QB3 spot. Last night, I thought Clifford looked pretty bad. El Guerzma looked pretty good in what we saw. He's got a cannon arm, fun tools. He just really can't move very well. Not very athletic. So, again, smart. He's got some good credentials from college. I think he was like the Heisman Trophy winner. I forget what the equivalent is in Canada, but he's a very promising player. I think he's ultimately going to lose out to the QB3 job to Clifford, but, we'll see. Let's go to running back. So last season, the Packers were 5th in the NFL in rushing. They were 7th in yards per carry, and they had 2,500 yards total on the ground. So, again, this is a really, really strong rushing attack. The biggest stat, though, that was crazy is they were the 2nd ranked team in rushing attempts who just paid their quarterback $55 million a year. So, again, I think injuries to Jordan made them lean into the running game maybe more than they originally anticipated, right? But where we saw in 2023, and I think it's pretty obvious that what we saw from Jacobs last year was better than Jones last year, and I think it was better than the 2023 version of Jones too. And if you remember in 23, there was a long stretch there in the games they were winning, by the way, like that Chiefs game, Chargers game, Lions game, where A.J. Dillon was a starting running back because Jones was hurt. There was just a lot more I formation running where they had, a fullback in there, whether it was Chris Brooks or whatever. They had single back formation under center. They used play action a lot in that formation. It just felt like that wasn't really there last season. Josh Jacobs finished with, I think, 1,300 yards. He was, in my opinion, the MVP of that Eagles game. He carried the team in other games, like the Colts game. There were others as well. That touchdown run he had against the Eagles at the end of the third quarter was one of the most, incredible runs that I've ever seen. Especially when you consider that it was against the, Super Bowl champions, future Super Bowl champions. So again, I knew he was going to be good for the Packers, but he's a top 50 player in the NFL, and he's one of the Packers' few like star players on the team, right? People that are really good that could carry the team. Top 5 running back in the league, in my opinion. I know he's not like ranked there fantasy wise, but as far as what he brings to the table, he's a top 5 running back. Again, one of my bold predictions on this last episode was that it could be his last season. I still think that's possible. That being said, I think he's going to have a really, really strong season in 25. I think his stats are going to be more along the lines of 1,100 yards rushing, maybe 350 receiving, 40 catches. I do think his yards per carry are going to get higher this year, though. Maybe closer to 5. Give me, 12 TDs on the season for him total. I think he's going to have a good season for sure. The other running backs, we're looking at Marshawn Lloyd. He's going to be RB2. He's got that injury right now, the soft tissue injury. I believe it's his groin. He's going to probably be back this week. Hopefully he'll be back this week. He was already back in practice on Monday, which is good. So I think that's definitely encouraging. I'm super high on him. I talked about in the bold predictions episode. I think he's going to be like 500 yards rushing this season, but he's going to show a lot of explosiveness and speed. He's going to be using the passing game a lot. I'm excited for him. Chris Brooks, he was taking the first team carries at running back during the preseason game. I think he's going to be like kind of a hybrid fullback, running back type of running back, but he's a really good pass protector. He can catch. He's got some good vision, some good burst. I think Chris Brooks is going to make the team. The other running back position is going to be interesting. We saw a lot of promise from Emmanuel Wilson. I really like Abanaconda, who they got from the 49ers, originally drafted by the Jets. We talked about him last week. He didn't have a great game last night, but Emmanuel Wilson didn't play. Keep an eye on Amar Johnson. I think he's going to be a practice squad guy. I brought him up in our draft class episode, like I said earlier. I think he's a shoo-in for the practice squad. He's the diet Emmanuel Wilson, what I would call. Andy Herman called him the Costco version of Emmanuel Wilson, which is pretty funny and I think accurate. So anyway, I think this year, running back-wise, we're going to see a lot of production from them, a lot of efficiency and productivity. The stats might not be where it was, and I really hope we don't see the second most running back or running attempts this year. I think the Banks, Ryan, Jenkins interior of the offensive line is going to improve their running game a lot. I mean, those three right there, Banks, Jenkins, and Ryan, are really good at run blocking, right? So I think we're going to see a better attack. It might just not be as many yards. Wide receivers, we're going to, obviously the locks are Jaden Reed, Wicks, Romeo Dobbs. Those are your veteran locks. Obviously, Christian Watson's going to start on the IR probably. PUP, whatever the hell it's called. Jaden Reed last season, he started out hot. Through the first 4 games, he was pacing at like 1,548 yards, right? Through the first 4 games, he had like 464 yards receiving. He had 10 TDs he was pacing for, and then we started to see less and less of him making plays, really after that Rams game. Of all the receivers, if I had to bet any money on who's going to be the most productive, I would go to Reed. Now, again, my prediction was it being Wicks. I still think my gut tells me it's going to be Wicks, but I think if you were to bet on it, and I don't bet, probably should, but I don't, I would put the money on Reed being the lead receiver this year. Then we have Wicks. I just mentioned Wicks. I won't go into all the detail with him. You guys know I'm really, really high on him. I've talked about him ad nauseum. Some of the reason I keep going back to Dontavian Wicks as a player to watch is what I'm about to tell you. In 2024, he had the best separation rate in the entire NFL. He got separation on 82% of his routes. The problem is, and always has been with him, at least last season, was catching it. He dropped 20% of his passes, which is like historically bad. So 1 out of every 5 targets that he got, he dropped. And there were some that don't count as drops on there where he just misplayed it, that he was in the wrong spot. So again, if we see a jump from him this year, if he can still get open at that same rate, but he catches even half of his targets, we're going to see a lot of stats from him. He was the number 1 targeted receiver last year. And that's true, yes. Dobbs, by all accounts, he's having the best camp of any of the receivers this year, even better than Golden from all accounts. This is his contract year, right? He's going to get paid next season. Even if he plays just the way he has to this point, he's going to get somewhere close to that Khalil Shakir deal, 15, 20 million a year. The Packers are not going to give him that if he's just average. We've been hearing this a while from Dobbs, like, oh, he had a great camp. If we remember from 22, his rookie year, how much, Aaron Rodgers talked about him in camp. We just have never really seen that big step in the regular season. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if it was this season, right? I think we all need to prepare for it. Again, it wasn't my prediction, but I think we need to be prepared for him having a really good season. He's always been a good player. He led the team in first downs last year. He led the team in TDs in 23. So I think he's going to be a fun player to watch in 25. I just think that ultimately we just haven't seen that step from him. And by year 4, you ideally would have seen it. So we'll see this season. Then we got the rookies. We got Savion Williams, who was one of my draft crushes, and then my man crush, Matthew Golden. Golden has had an incredible camp. Excuse me. For a first-round pick, it's the best first-round pick we've seen in camp, at least under Goody. He hasn't dropped a pass yet. He's showing the speed. He's a really, really smooth route runner. He's making at least 1 big play a day, which is what you want from a rookie, right? The first down catch he had against the Jets the other night in the preseason game, that was, again, a really, really good hands catch. He had an insane catch in practice yesterday, like where a normal receiver would have laid out for it, dropped down to their legs and the knees and to catch it. He just caught it on the run with his hands. He's got great hands. Early in the season, I think we're going to see, Dobbs, Wicks, Reed getting the majority of the targets, barring injury, of course. But I think after that, we're going to see Golden, make a lot of plays later in the season. I've loved him since the first time I watched him. The draft night when he was picked was one of the highlights of my entire Packers fandom. My wife, I don't know if you listen to this, Corley, but I apologize for the loud screams that night. I also apologize to the neighbors, but I think he's going to be a special player. I worry that it will happen later in the season, not early, so we might not see massive stats from him. But again, I'd love to be wrong, and there's a decent chance that I am. Xavier Williams, my other draft crush, he's definitely had a role with the ones since he's been healthy. He missed a little bit of the early part of camp. He missed mini camp as well. They clearly are using him in goal line situations. They're doing a lot of manufactured touches for him. And I think we're going to see a lot of really big plays from this year. I think we're going to have a lot of games where we're just like, wow, Savion looked insane on that 25-yard run where he, beat everyone to the sideline, juked somebody out, slammed into somebody, right? We're going to hear a lot of that this year. We're going to see it. I just don't know if we're going to see it enough to where he's going to have like a big stat year. I could see him being in that 500 all-purpose yards, maybe 300 receiving yards this year. But, again, I think big picture, he has the highest ceiling of any player on this entire team, not just at the receiver position. He's got to get the drops under control. By all accounts, he's had a pretty good preseason or training camp without dropping the ball. So, that's good. Christian Watson's the wild card, right? I don't know when we're going to see him. I truly do not know. If he was not put on IR and he was literally active and he missed the first 2 games and then he played week 3, I would not be surprised. I also wouldn't be surprised if he missed the first 6 games. I think if I had to predict, it'll be like week 4 or 5 when we see him. The things that this offense can do, guys, from a speed standpoint. Again, I just want you to picture this really quick. Imagine having Watson, Reed, Musgrave, Golden, and Lloyd on the field at the same time. I mean, I have to imagine Matt LaFleur is up at night just grinning over all the things that they can do with the speed on this team. Again, having Golden and Watson on the team, there's just so many things you can do. You can have them running out and ups, right? You can have one of them running a go ball to pull the safety off, the other one running an in cut 15 yards downfield, and it being wide open because Watson pulled the safety back, and then you get Golden with some space in the middle, right? Or maybe you get Musgrave on a linebacker because Watson and Golden are going to get covered by the safety and the corners, right? And Musgrave's going to outrun a safety in a corner every day of the week. Maybe you do that, and then you run a screen pass to Marshawn Lloyd, and he's got 15 yards before anybody even touches him with his speed, right? I just think there's a ton of stuff you can do. I think it's going to take a few weeks when Watson comes back to be what he was, right? But I think, again, contract season for him too. I think we're going to see a good value from him. By the end of the season, he's going to be back to normal. So again, we talked about everybody who's going to make the team so far. That leaves Mecole Hardman and Malik Heath for that final spot. I think up until last night, I would have told you that my prediction would have been that Mecole Hardman makes the team because of what he does on the punt return team. But then he muffs a punt, and he has a drop on 3rd down, right? This is a guy he's a veteran. He's 27 years old, one of the oldest. He's actually the oldest receiver on the team. He's averaged 10 yards per punt return in his career. Last year, it was 10 yards per return. No fumbles, right? There is no one on the Packers who is better at punt returning than him. Now, he didn't show that in the first game, but if somebody can show that they can return punts, better than I would say Jaden Reed has to this point, I really don't want Golden back there, to be honest. I think Savion's a bit too bricky with his hands. I like Savion as a kick returner, not a punt returner. I just don't know who's going to make the team here. Malik Heath is clearly running ahead of him, and I mean, he's getting first-team reps, Malik Heath is, and he had first-team reps the other night, obviously some of it due to injury. We didn't see Mecole Hardman at all from on the first team. So I think Heath is probably in the lead, but, he dropped 2 passes in the game, and he dropped a really easy pass yesterday in practice by all accounts. So he's a great blocker. He's got strong hands, but we just haven't really seen that jump from him this season. He's kind of just been status quo. So I don't know who makes the team between the two. If I had to predict, it'll be Heath, but I could see a world because of having Bo Melton as a corner and that can play receiver. I could see a situation where they cut Hardman and Heath. Julian Hicks is another guy I like. He's made a lot of plays in camp this year. On the second team, him and Malik Willis have a clear rapport there. We didn't see it in the game. But assuming he makes plays in the preseason, right, if we start to see a jump from him, I don't think that by any means that Malik Heath's spot is locked in. And I think Julian Hicks, we saw him running on the same teams as Heath. I think he could get himself in that conversation if he had a couple big weeks. Again, there's just so many weapons in this receiver room. I know there's not that number one receiver that we hear about on every talk show, every radio show, every critic of Gutekunst that doesn't know anything about football. It's always, well, they don't have a number one. They never really had a, they never really had a number one in 2011 either, right? They had Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Donald Driver. They had a lot of guys. And they're clearly trying to model this receiver room after that. And we haven't seen that from them, right? But if this receiver room takes the jump that we think they can do, I think that this is going to be a really, 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 really strong receiver room. I've said it a lot. I'll wrap up on this with the receivers. That's the biggest reason that we didn't see the 2023 version of Jordan this last season, was because the receivers didn't take a step. Drops, bad routes, missed assignments, being in the wrong place all the time. There was a ton of stuff from them that we didn't see a jump. But if we see that 2023 level at minimum, the way they played at the end of that season, and I think it's going to be better than that, with the addition of Golden and Tucker Kraft now being a weapon at tight end, which we'll get into, we're going to see a really, really strong showing from the receivers this year. Let's get into the tight ends. I won't spend too much time on the tight ends. Tucker Kraft, I think, can be one of the best tight ends in the league. I think he was one of the best tight ends in the league last season. The bold predictions episode, I said I think he emerges as a top 5 to 7 tight end this season. I would not be shocked at all if he was 10 plus TDs, 60 receptions, 700 to 900 yards. I don't think anybody who's in my fantasy league is listening to this, but if they are, I'm going to draft Tucker Kraft. And if not, I'll probably trade 3 guys to get him. Just kidding. I think he's going to be the most reliable pass catcher on the team by the end of the season. Would not be surprised at all if that happens. Like I said, I think he gets all pro votes. I think he gets Pro Bowl votes, all the votes. Luke Musgrave is where it gets interesting, though. We drafted him in the second round. He was definitely the lead guy in 2023. Tucker Kraft had a really bad camp. Some of you might remember all the bad stuff in camp. He looked lost, didn't know what the hell he was doing, dropping passes, right? And then we saw Tucker Kraft take a big jump during that stretch of games, again, in 2023 when the Packers started beating a lot of good teams. We think about Musgrave, though, that 2023 season. That Rams game, he had his first touchdown catch in that game. He had a really nice game against Pittsburgh. He had that awesome seam shot. He had those scheme TDs. I guess the Bears one wasn't a TD where they ran the little leak. And then they had the TD against the Cowboys that they schemed up, right? Musgrave, again, 6'6", 250 pounds, runs a 4.5. So again, he ran a faster 40-yard dash than Dontavian Wicks. At the Senior Bowl, he was running at 22 miles an hour. I mean, this dude can fly. He's got really good hands. He runs pretty good routes. He's just never been healthy. In 2024, he had 3 games where he was healthy, had 47 yards in the whole season. So again, in 24, Tucker established himself as a, potential star tight end. But I think this season we're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets here. We're going to see a lot of scheme touches for Musgrave, getting him on linebackers and even linemen and safeties, right? I think, again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but put Reed in the slot, put Golden and Watson on the outside, have Tucker run some shallow routes, and then sneak Musgrave out on a wheel route or something. I mean, you can just do so much stuff, right? I think Musgrave's getting slept on a ton. I know that Sam Munson and C. Palazzolo, the guys from the 33rd team, have talked a little bit about Musgrave taking a jump this season. So it's not like no one is talking about him. But again, I think we need to pay attention to him. As far as the number 3 tight end, again, those 2 are going to make the team, obviously. I think John Fitzpatrick is the shoe-in for the number 3 tight end at this point. He plays on teams. He's a great blocker. They re-signed him and actually gave him a pretty good chunk of signing bonus, which is a good indication that he, was going to make the team, or they want him to make the team, because if they cut him, they owe him that money on the cap, right? He went to Georgia, a.k.a. Green Bay South. He's a good blocker, like I said. We've started to see a little bit more as a receiver from him this year. He had a really nice catch, I think, with the 3s in the game the other night. I think Ben Sims is the better athlete. He's got a higher ceiling as an athlete, as a receiving option, but he's not a great blocker, and he's not taking a jump as a receiver. So I see John Fitzpatrick being the number 3 tight end. Lastly, we've kept this really long. I'm sorry, guys. We got the offensive line. I expected a lot better play last the other night from Jennings and Monk, but I think they have a really strong top 7. Getting Josh Myers out of town for Elton Jenkins, putting Banks in at guard. I think I cannot state enough, guys, especially if you watch the All-22, how bad Josh Myers was last season and how bad he's been really since he's been on the team. He's not a great run blocker. He gave up the highest pressure rate by all positions on a really good offensive line last season from the Packers. 10% of snaps he gave up of pressure. That's crazy. I think losing Myers was addition by subtraction. I think they felt like they had to play him because of being a second-round pick. This offensive line the Packers have this year will be a top 5 offensive line, guaranteed. As long as there's not injuries, but even if there are injuries, they got, Anthony Belton and they have Jordan Morgan that can step in, right? So they're basically 7 deep, and I like Donovan Jennings and Jacob Monk. So those are the 9 guys who are going to make it on the team, my prediction. They were PFF's 6th ranked offensive line. It was their second best, though, in pass block win rate. So again, as a running back unit, they weren't super good last season in terms of being given places to run. A lot of Josh Jacobs' runs were just him being amazing, right? We're seeing a little bit more of more at Morgan right now because Rasheed Walker's hurt at left tackle. I think Walker's going to get a contract elsewhere next year. Jordan Morgan is clearly being groomed as his replacement. I still think there's a world, and remember this podcast, there's a world where they move Zach Tom to center and Anthony Belton plays right tackle. I don't know if it happens, but they've already uttered it before that Zach Tom could be a Hall of Fame center. I don't think they just say that without any thinking of him being there. I think it reflects in the contract. He didn't get top tackle money. So again, I think there's a world where that happens. Again, Belton, right tackle so far. He's played a little bit of left tackle in camp. I do think that one of the two, whether it's Morgan or Walker, are going to play guard next year, but we'll see. Starters this year, Walker, Banks, Jenkins, Ryan, Tom. Belton and Morgan are going to be the backups. I think Jacob Monk and Donovan Jennings make the team. And after that, I'm just not really sure. John Williams, the 7th rounder, who a lot of people were pretty excited about. He's been hurt. He's got a back injury. It sounds like a long-term injury. Travis Glover, who took a step in camp, he's out for the season. So I'm a little nervous about their interior depth. Kadeem Telfort played some guard against the Eagles in that playoff game when he subbed out Glover, who was playing terrible. Telfort's had a bad camp. So we'll see how this turns out, right? But I think offensive line is going to be a strength. I think they're going to be really good, and they've gotten better since last season. So to kind of sum it up, offense as a whole, the ceiling is, best offense in Green Bay history, best offense in the league, historically good. Their floor is like top 12 in the league, right? I think they'll probably be somewhere in the upper middle of that. Ultimately, I think maybe number 2 offense in scoring, say 30.2 points a game, number 4 offense yards per game. I think Jordan's an MVP candidate. I think we get four wide receivers and Tucker Kraft over 700 yards this year. The thing that could make them struggle is if we see, a healthy Jordan Love looking more like the 24 version of him. I think that's the worst version we're ever going to see. I think you can win with that version. I mean, they won 12 games last season, but that's not going to carry the team, right? If the receivers don't take a jump and Jordan plays that way, like last season, I think we could see some regression from the offense. Again, offensive line, if we see Aaron Banks play like he did kind of at the end of last season, he started super strong last year and then he fell off quite a bit, according to accounts other than me, because I don't know offensive line. I think that could be an issue, that if we start getting a lot of injuries on the offensive line, especially in the interior, I could think that could hurt a little bit. If we don't see a jump in run blocking, that could hurt them, right? But again, I think ultimately the offense reaches its ceiling depending on what version of Jordan we get. And then we see that version of Jordan based on the version of the wide receivers we get. Again, if Jordan looks like second half of 2023 with the jump in the receiver room, that's where we see the high ceiling. If we see 24 Jordan Love with receivers dropping passes, not cleaning up mistakes, nobody takes a jump in that room, that's a top 15 offense, right? Now, I don't see a world where that happens. I think this is going to be a really, really good offense, and everyone needs to be prepared for a ton of fun, assuming everyone stays healthy. Appreciate you guys listening all the way to the end. I apologize. I'm losing my voice a little bit. I talked a lot at work yesterday and talked a lot in this podcast, but I appreciate you listening. Leave a 5-star review, leave a comment, send a question, download the podcast. That really helps if you download it. And I really appreciate you guys listening, and I will see you next week. We got the Packers versus Colts this week in preseason. We'll review that game and preview the defense on the next episode. Otherwise, have a good week, and thank you for listening. Go Pack, go.